We're working with our partners at Marine Scotland and Fisheries Management Scotland, and we have a common aim. And that common aim is to find out where the salmon are going as they leave the rivers on the west coast of Scotland and head out to their feeding grounds. And by knowing this, by knowing the routes that they're taking, we can work out how better to protect these salmon.
There's a huge international effort that's going into salmon management. Salmon are such an important species, not only for their economic importance, but they're important in terms of their role in the ecosystems. They're both predator and prey. They move nutrients around, they move energy through systems, and they play a role in the marine ecosystems as well.
What we are doing over the west coast, that we're tagging on 10 rivers between the Laxfords and the Outer Hebrides right down to the Nith in Dumfries and Galloway, and we want to see where fish go when they leave the rivers and reach the sea.
It's quite incredible that we're hopefully going to be able to track the path of the little smolt in the open ocean out there, you know, right out to the Outer Hebrides.
The deployment plan tomorrow is leave here at 5 a.m. It's a 4-hour cruise to get to where they start to go over the side, and then basically we're just going to keep going until everything's deployed. They're all on very specific coordinates, so we know where to go to pick them back up again. Then of course we've got the Minch, and then down to Barra Point for 8 of them, and then we hope to see them again in August.
We need to know the routes of salmon because on the west coast it's a rapidly developing marine environment. Over the last 50 years we've had the growth of the aquaculture industry, and in more recent times we've had renewable energy putting in more and more facilities out on the west coast of Scotland. And we need to make sure that all of that infrastructure is in an appropriate place.
We've been looking at fish farm applications, for example, for years now, saying, you know, whether we approve or whether we have objections on whatever grounds. The one thing we've never actually known is the path of the migratory fish on their outward journey. And, you know, in a way, we've been kind of shooting blind on this thing for years and years, and this thing could fill in the gaps.
So what the receiver does is it picks up those fish migrating past when the fish have a tag implanted. So as they migrate past, the receiver will be able to detect a ping, but the receiver needs to be in a place where the river is nice and smooth, there's no ripples, and there's no man-made structures, because that noise will kind of reduce the signal of detecting the fish. So where you put it is quite important, and also it needs to have a broad range so that if a fish swims by, it's not going to be missed.
Yeah, so this is just our plan of where we're going to put the equipment down. So we have which array it's on in different columns here, the station number, who's deploying it, we have the details of the deployment, and then the various different coordinates. And there's different kinds of receivers that we're putting down. So we're putting down a combination of receivers that don't automatically release when they get an instruction from a hydrophone to do so. We put them in the shallower water, and then as we get to deeper water, we put down these automatic release canisters that when we go back to them and we can give them a signal, they will release a weak link from their anchor point, and then with a float they will come to the surface and we can retrieve them.
The West Coast Tracking Project is a partnership of Marine Scotland Science, Fisheries Management Scotland and the Atlantic Salmon Trust. And we've come together in this project to better understand the coastal distribution of salmon smolts so that we can better protect them moving forward. The next step is to determine how salmon are actually using this by looking at their swimming behaviour in sea. And that's why we're tagging them. From there, we'll be able to improve the models that are being developed, which will then, in time, feed into the planning system to be able to better protect wild Atlantic salmon.
Each of the fish that are tagged in the rivers are given an acoustic tag that has an individual signature. It has its own set of pings that come out, so it's individually identifiable by the receivers. So the receivers that we're putting out have got a range. So what we have to do is we have to strategically position those receivers at places along the potential migration route of the fish, so that as the fish get within range, they can be picked up by the receivers and recorded and given a timestamp that can then relate them to that location.
The smolts at this time of year, April, May, are heading out to sea. So what the parr do is they turn silvery and they start to migrate towards the sea. So they're all going downstream basically. So what we need to do is to set a trap to catch a downstream migrating fish. And the way we do that here is using a thing called a fyke net. And a fyke net is just a simple net trap. When we position it in a place where the smolts get funneled into a narrow channel, and the fyke net itself has wings on it at the sides, and it goes into a funnel, and then the funnel reduces down to a collection chamber at the back. And once the smolts have entered the trap, they can't turn backwards, so they all have to end up at the collection chamber at the back. And that's really how we trap the downstream migrating smolts. And then gradually we process the fish. So that's measuring the fish, and then the fish that are big enough, it's actually over 130 millimeters, we can tag these fish. And the ones that aren't big enough, we release back into the river.
You know, if we'd just taken one or two rivers, we would have got an idea for one or two rivers. But the beauty of this project is by taking rivers right across the whole of the coast of Scotland and starting to understand how the smolts are behaving, how the fish are moving, say from the Nith, how they're moving north. If they are moving north, we're expecting them to go, but we need to demonstrate that. And keeping an open mind just on how they're using this environment, because it's that we need, it's that understanding that we need at that scale so that we can best protect them. And we really do need to protect these fish. The ones that we have on the west coast are the tough survivors, and we've got a duty, all of us, all involved in this project, to really protect them, nurture them, and bring them back to their former numbers.